maybe they quick resistance to existence, maybe it was not enough to conquer the shame, maybe they understand they execute the cure for the bottom.
That was kinda agnostic to the plot. Maybe they quick resistance to existence, maybe.
That was kinda agnostic to reply. Maybe they quick resistance to existence, maybe it was.
That was kinda agnostic to reply. Maybe they quick resistance to existence, maybe it was not enough to conquer the shame. Maybe they understand the execution cure for the bottom of the tongue is decreasing. You compare yourself with the ditch, maybe the critic with yourself and looking inside of what you reveal. I don't want to ridicule for the act of me, not me utter for the triple, and it made me foolish and act. Seeking for the testing, and maybe the intellectual enough to be free. With the instinct to me defines him, so maybe for the understanding the names of the maybe what you could proclaim. The manifestation of what your unbounded eye has. I understand. Inspired by what the means, maybe the gift of engaging of the eye. Understanding what the apple you see, compared to the maybe the came from the interaction, maybe what we feel with the breath, that ventilation, maybe we fall into uncertainty. The roots of the knowledge of this, not be the happy, the awakening of instinct, present, the aggravated and agitation, the purely rad or cool enough to find it just the first half, being a high ground placed on foundations despite the disadvantage of yourself, the ignorance, maybe the not, the insurance, the understanding their present life on the earth and the calculations of what's not to be a phenomenon. Truths of self that are brought to you by most congruent. Don't be unfailing, absolutely dabbling in yourself with the spirit's been bestowed upon you. Treasure yourself with the spirit's not to yet to be. Constitute yourself with the understanding of all the statutes and maybe for the rebirth of you. The soil confidently, maybe you can migrate. Stick yourself to the ground for the noble act of thirst, not no longer be ashamed for the doing of the business of something righteous. Shape yourself wholly for the speech, again, maybe the outrage, the emotions, the remnants. Maybe this is made about it, the feeling of the feeling. Remarkably expressed, maybe the understanding of your aggravation, the calling of the example that was trying to give the proper course, not to be the recall. Taking the serious for an account, consider for the character act not to bring forth to you more words of trials about the understanding what was put forward in the hands by our blind. Man happily and pleasure with the pure. But the decision is surely hinging on what you meant.
That was kinda agnostic to reply. Maybe that quick resistance to existence, maybe it was not enough to conquer the shame, for maybe the understanding the execution cure for the bottom of the tongue gonna be decreasing. You compare yourself. Halloween will find a metamorphosis in the written new idea. Halloween for the interpretation of your maybe ideology and the purchase of it nowadays. You can have the irony for the fantasy, invention, the money. Maybe the civil rights and maybe the value. Maybe the currency to which you are, the habit's been defining. Doing for the song, for the name, for the figure of the you, the deep strangling, for the innocence of great. Shoot to the last, the game. No progressiveness and without a rulership, indeed to regard the spiritual path. Faith now replaced by your credit. Maybe the fiction for the mutual honesty. Upright for the most elaborate safeguard for the again the text and your trickery for the what comes to pass beneath the benediction, but maybe the credit for the offering, the witness in the same inclination. Who's to blame upon for maybe the certainty for the discipline, the art for not to bungle upon yourself, for the coinage of the money for the understanding what was invented, the stealing, the blamable for that, for maybe because of the entire self, for to be too barbaric for the little self-knowledge to be a man. Representation, maybe not combating myself with the name, the certain promises of what you become, and accommodating for the self, for the brutal violence of every running, really hard, but maybe I can find myself racist to the act of being upset and hurt. I should be passionate for the hope, for the special welfare, for the support for the love, for the ever under the inner motive, for the reawakening of myself, for the understanding that I compete with the antagonizing, for the self-inspection. Necessity for the defining relationship, for the art, for the certain gift, for the breach, and I combine enough, but it would probably have to be recognized as so. Outset, maybe too difficult to understand the blindness of the past, maybe the happy pure breed. Hand in hand with the inclination of what's here, the climate for disclosure. seek yourself as a weapon for the mankind, bringing to the birth of the great characteristics yourself, finding yourself far rather than coming to the light for the almost thoroughly and purebred race. Seems that it would still be unbroken for the nature to force to find nothing but say, higher the humanity go for the only trials that to be deprived of the peculiar pride. You can find a race and make you still give yourself an understanding of the taste of the character. You may be what one day with the mirror. Degeneration for that to be generation, for that to be taken seriously into account, but if you would only not explain what you were trying to say, proper course might be that the purest calling for the untapped of the devastation. Maybe this is the thirsty act for you. Disregard for the population being rooted out of town for the country. You can be your female for the bodies and not to be finding less free for this. Peaceful, wisdom bond, seriously in account, disregard. Maybe those who first plan for the restoration, but maybe the patriots, only the meeting for the gentility for the poet. Who's the real patriot? The radical body with the understanding and no longer wanting over oneself for the vanity and degree only for you to be the character and trait. Align with yourself is strange enough for the spirit to not be started upon it for the which you never want you have the common treasure. The silliest news for yourself to give it under anything but a phrase for what it represents to you. The expression of the shine, but maybe the foreignality for the understanding of what life is beyond. Now I descend to permit for the ensuring of your domination, what you learned to do now. What matters more or less is the name of the lifestyle, the triumphs, the confessions. I can be liberal, who's that transcends and nonsense for the unity for the disadvantages of myself, which is grace. Into venturing off, and I should have been obliged to discard it for the idea, but maybe an distinction. Perhaps this would be the search for something higher. Eventually that to me vaguely enough to find myself with understanding for the noble opportunity of happiness. Finding myself with the purely as a human. Or maybe not the cosmetology, but the fact that probably I had the expectations of the solution as a problem. Running about for this, for this history to run away from perseveration for the love of the human species, myself and feeling the kinship of one to be every immediate mentally springing. Something that would deserve for my to be the survey for the whole the operation to be myself with the pity. Striving to be the best and maybe the future and give you a family. Woe to the meaning for the benefit for the benefits in which you can find the unmeasuring of your tongue. Speaking of one for the ignorance is hum, drawing for one for the resting their mouth. You may be taking into account you could do all the study and know everything, but not the kind of prima branch. Stretch your limbs for the understanding that you will never be a spiritual hero. Doing who I need to find yourself through parent hero. Save me for maybe the what's able to understand the prize. Give myself for the full bottles for the case upon the clouded eyes. Maybe that to be rightly estimated for the foreigners acting with the value. According to undwelling for the understanding the seekers in the search of purely. Not to be you. Helpful memory, itself to the subject of genuinity. Maybe not for the great discussion, you could be the great escape for the intellectual, fighting yourself especially. Proclaim, in the spirit for the conservation, not deliver. Understanding your utterance, maybe the commonality for the dispute. Was a noble act for the class for the interest, and maybe the objections in order for you to be a student for the comprehension. Seeing that you're not that fired up enough at this dream. Find myself in the depths of the mission for the peculiarity, but maybe it wasn't the figmentation of your distraught for the mankind. Maybe the numb for those for the party for the soul acts for the dignity. How to be high for sympathy, but maybe standing out from watching these societies for dreams assist not to cry for the other pierce yourself with the use of race. Halloween will find a metamorphosis in their rhythm.
was in the scented photograph, laying on the corners, and the boundary was spreading like disease. Like disease.
that training, I know I need something else. So, stack with the feeling of the man, which can come for the purpose you can find accountability. Maybe the human beast for the I can find that pray to me, I pray upon them, pray for you, except for the monarch, for the pop, for the world, for the ravening, for the beast, and unserving, the domination, and the prosper, sovereign. Maybe for the decaying, for the owning of yourself and the nutrients. You can feed your brain, the light, the plague, the pains, the care for the body, the soul. I know that maybe the species, the shovel. To yourself an empty life and the fear for the cutting of a shoulders begin. You hear that train again for the understanding, the effect of the production. The light, the praise, the bomb for yourself, for the world, for the service to return yourself to the temptation of the middle, counteract to find yourself along for the paradise and attempting to meet yourself and seemingly progress. Impotence for the paradise attempting. Goes on for the final operation to passing you by. Maybe not for the holding gun, holding still. Holding no for the attempt to define yourself a own way society. Regeneration for the certain prominence for the members so you can be like complaining for the comrades in the most part. You practice the abstinence for the understanding purely personal. Maybe for the knowing of the practice in which you can find you regenerated for the thoughts. Alone for that can make the union more powerful that you can find yourself for the more practical and somewhat extended for the scoping. Maybe the understanding the member you can be public and sympathizing for your ultimate plea. Though you truly are beneficial towards what the cause is for the fact. Pursuing the pity for the not for the point for the intelligence, for the adaptation, for the deeper talk. That mutual understanding is hard to find when you'd have two societies for the might gain the power for no means to be despised. I want to know myself for the continuation of God. About this, I could reach all highs. Who's to smoke that for the understanding that reason decent must be discovered for the surviving and training for the shining awakening of the sun. Simply for the babbling of what I've been practicing for what I vulnerable for the I for I comply is to receive myself and once again repeat the echoes and understanding the vibration of the signal. Perhaps you could be marveling, awakening for the extinction. It's simple enough for the lyric, perhaps maybe it's the reawakening for the imagination to become quite dangerous for the breath of the word for the understanding and once proud for the bit for the not I spoken. Cry for the vocal products and prudent tense for the intercourse and maybe the political action maybe between for you understanding what's regard for the unconceivable respect. Whoever for ways with this a matter of wealth and understanding absurd, maybe the escaping yourself for the least in the height with astonishing other levity, maybe for road, maybe your authorities, which you can find a degree the smallest sense of what you were doing, the form of the run, hide your face for the guard for the difference of the confession, maybe it could be possible. Conceiving your accountability for what's apart, for it doesn't matter about the history, for the acknowledgement for the various ways of foolishness, the holding accountability for the perverted way, for the formula for defining yourself, for the principle including exclamations and applicable for the first thing you could do is strike at me. It would be the reference. It would be the experience for yourself to be lame enough and one for the allegations, maybe for the patriarchy, maybe the instance for the understanding of the women's. The submitted, the criticism, the evolving of the act for the actual, losing the French for the grounding work for the understanding to be beneath your feet, recognizing and examining the credentials, maybe the opinions of myself and late for the countless actions, not to be a prophet for whom I have made that far too much to do, or maybe the truth for far hard for the proving of aspect with ourselves of the world. Upon it, decay, superiority, maybe the revolution would take you, maybe in spite for the desperation, for the civilization, for this you to be the loss in the teachings. You work out the sum for the outcome for the culture was simply necessity for waging wars. Together we'll still find a peace with according to the state of society, maybe divided into the military, the state of mind for the civil class, you could be a couple. Military, state of mind for the knowledge, and this would be experience to the great. Classification, you open the high velocity for the joy of the admiration for the point to which you draw for the tension for these to be the not questions but the whole dispute appearing to me. The property for not to be the ownership of once you would find jeopardy. I laying for the look for the arm and aiming more for the insurance for the possession, not for anything else but the heart. Investigating myself for the nature not to be enduring or endeavoring. What is property besides having acquired for that to greater sacredness and maybe the social conscience and maybe the religion. With the understanding of what's later for the leniency and not the damage with the former forgiveness. Deemed you or defining basing your abilities or maybe define the pity for yourself and not the proportion. The symmetry and define yourself in the manifestly and maybe the principles such as the privileges act to add solitude for the compelling of reckoning. Impossible enough to find the adjustments to conflict your protection. which you can find in wireless and maintaining the true linear meaning of defense of their processors and begin to go through. Segregation for the brain, maybe they apply for yourself for the heart. The problem is the solution for maybe a confined and last suggestions for divine division of all those suggestions you can find. That's it. Amenable. Maybe the scene should be repossessed for the disposal. Apparently, find the simple idea for the driven, for the being, for the body, for the making of the confident. You can find the land ring of death for the agony.
That was kinda obnoxious to reply. Maybe that quick resistance. That was kinda obnoxious to reply. Maybe that quick resistance to existence. Maybe it was not enough to conquer the shame for maybe the understanding. That was kinda obnoxious to reply. Maybe that quick resistance to existence. Maybe it was not enough to conquer the shame for maybe the understanding. The execution curve for the bottom of the tongue gonna be decreasing. You compare yourself with the ditch, maybe the critic. Was yourself and looking inside of what you refuse. I don't want to ridicule for the act and be not me utter for the triple and I made me foolish and act. Thinking for the testing and maybe the intellectual enough to be free. With the instinct to me defines him, so maybe for the understanding the names that maybe what you could proclaim is the manifestation what your unclouded eye has. Understanding, inspired by what the deeds, maybe the gift of the gazing of the eye. Understanding what we have perceived, Christine, the heritage maybe retained for the interaction and maybe what we feel for the breath of the vast. Ventilation, maybe we could fall into uncertainty. The roots, the knowledge for this not to be the happening, but the reawakening of instinct. Present for the aggravated and agitation for the purely radical enough to find the instinct of perhaps be on high ground placed on foundation despite the disadvantage of yourself, the ignorance, maybe the gnash, the insurance, the understanding their present life on the earth and the calculations of what's not to be a phenomenon. True as itself with the brought to you by most congruent. Don't be unfailing, absolutely dabbling in yourself with the spirit's been bestowed upon you. Treasure yourself with the still is not to yet to be the news. Constitute yourself with the understanding the law, the statutes, and maybe for the rebirthing of you. The soil confidently, maybe you can migrate. Stick yourself to the ground for the noble act to durst, not no longer be ashamed for the doing of the business of something righteous. Shape yourself wholly for the speech, the again, maybe the outrage, the emotions, the remnant, or maybe decimated by the people, the feeling of community. Remarkably expressed for maybe the understanding of your aggravation for the calling of the example that I was trying to give for the proper course and not to be the recall. Taking it seriously or an account or consider for the character act not to bring forth to you the more birth of the child for the father, but understanding what was worth born the hand by blinded. Man happily moving the pleasure for the pure. The decision is surely hinging on what was meant. The progression, maybe the romance of not finding, understanding the value that you lack. Pronouncing yourself for the recognizing of maybe the problem. Relations or I don't know, for the authority, for the authenticity maybe lies upon me, for the end of the plainly lies at the bottom of the present movement. For little as it may be convinced by behavior, it's expressed for your own belief. You can be clever and really stealing and combating yourself as a seed for you not to be a name. Claim fulfillment for your certain understanding of what the representation you give. Who's to blame for that? Maybe I can find it on. It's certainly not upon the virtuosity. Progressively, you can find an advocate for those who complete yourself with a scary picture expressed by the mouth, the understanding of body language are written. By you to surpass the possessions and absence of the love and the conditions of what I happen to find not to be vision to be having. This is a suggestion. Find love now, soon, hurry, make haste. Dispose of your whack ideas for the adjustment, the conflict, for the protection of your property and what you can find as and what to maintain. You with the understanding, maybe dot the brains for this, the possible, maybe heart, and maybe the understanding of this inheritance and the manifestation of what the principles in such free. Forgiveness, leniency, compromising, decency, chasing, occupying, unfavorable. Or maybe the application of yourself, gaining your music for the use of yourself, and finding nothing else joyful enough for you to be wished to draw upon the attention. Your talent maybe to what to refine yourself, and whereas you to be crying is a contradiction, teaching to who remaining not to be whole. Far too much you're gone along for not to be through an aspect, an aspect submitted to you. Halloween will find a metamorphosis in the written no idea. Halloween for the interpretation of your maybe ideology and the purpose of it nowadays. You can have the earning for the band for the invention of money. Maybe the civil rights and maybe the values. Maybe the currency to which you are, the habits been defining. Doom for the song for the name, the figure of the youth to be strangling for the innocence and great. Shoot to the last, the game. No progressiveness and without a rulership, indeed disregard the spiritual path. Faith now replaced by your credit. Maybe the fiction for the mutual honesty. Upright for the most alive, or sick God to begin the catch. And grow trickery for the what comes to pass beneath the benediction. With maybe the credit for the offering, the witness in the same inclination. Who's to blame upon for maybe the sarcastic for the distance of the art, but not to bungle upon yourself. For the coinage of the money for the understanding what was invented. Stealing. The blamable for that, and maybe because the entire self would be too barbaric for the little self, now it's to be a man. Representative, maybe I can battle myself with the name. With a certain promises of what you become, and accommodated for the self, for the brutal violence of every brother, ruling problem. Maybe I can find myself based to the act of being upset and hurt. I should be present for the hope of special welfare, for the support for the love, for the ever under the inner motive, for the reawakening of myself, for the understanding I can peak with the antagonizing, for the self-inspection. Necessity for the defining relationship with art, for the certain gift of the reach, and I combine enough with it would probably have to be recognized as so. Outset, maybe too difficult to understand the blinding into the past, but maybe the happy pure breed. Hand in hand for the declination, what's here the line of the birth culture. Seek yourself with the weapon for the mankind, bringing to the birth of the great characteristics of yourself, finding yourself far rather than coming to the light for the almost silly and purebred race. Seems that it would still be unbroken for the nature reports and find nothing to say. Iron, the human ego for the only trials that can be the prize, to kill your pride, for you to find a race, and maybe still give yourself an understanding of the taste of the character. You may be what one day with the mirror. Degeneration, for that to be generation, for that to be taken seriously into account, but if you would only not explain what you were trying to say, proper course might be for the throat to be calling for the unexample of devastation, maybe it's just the thirsty act for you. There's a disregard for the population that's been rooted out of town, for the country you pursue your female, for the violation not to be found less degree, to be soon wished upon, seriously in account, disregard, maybe those who birth, plan for the restoration, for maybe the patriots, only the meaning for the gentility for the poet, who's the real patriot. The radical body with the understanding they're no longer wanting everyone to sell, but the benefit and agree only for you to be their character and trait. Line, but yourself is strange enough, the spirit did not to be starred upon, for the which you once you have the time to treasure. The silliest news for yourself to give it under anything but the phrase for what it represents to you. The expressing the eyes to shine for maybe the foreignality, for the understanding of what life is beyond. Now I just send the temperament for the ensuring of your domination, what you are to do now. What matters more or less for the name of the lifestyle, for the triumphant, the confession. I can be liberal. Who's that princess and naturally for the unity, for the disadvantage for myself, it's your grace. Maybe this venturing off and I should have been obliged for discarding for the idea for maybe an distinction. Perhaps this would be the search for something higher. Event for that to merely vaguely enough to find myself with understanding for the noble I could be happy. Defining my spirit for the purely as a human. Or maybe not the cosmopolitan, but the fact that we properly I had the expectation for the solution as a problem. Running about for this, for the history, to running away from preservation, for the love for the human, the species, myself, and feeling the kinship for one to be intermediate, and maybe the springing for something that was deserved for my to be the survey, for the whole the operation to be myself for the pity. Striving to be the best and maybe the future and give you a family. Woe to the meaning for the benefit, for the benefits in which you can find the unmeasuring of your tongue. Speaking of one for the ignorance is hung, drawing for one for the pristine mountain, maybe taking into account you could do all the study and know everything, but not behind the primo branch. Stretch your limbs for the understanding that you could never be a spiritual hero. To whom I need to find yourself through to hero me. Save me from maybe the what's able to understand the prize. Gift myself for the forefathers, for the gazing upon the clouded eyes. Maybe that ought to be rightly estimated for the foreigners acting the value. According to undwelling for the understanding the seekers in the sieve the purely. Not to be helpful memory, itself to the substance that genuinity. Halloween will find a metamorphosis in the written no idea. Halloween for the interpretation of your maybe ideology and the purchase of it nowadays. You can have the earning for the pen for the invention of money. Maybe the civil rights and maybe the values. Maybe the currency to which you are, the habits been defining. Doom for the song, for the name, for the figure of the you to be the strangling, for the innocence and great. Shoot for the last, the game. No progressiveness and without a rulership, indeed to regard the spiritual path. Faith now replaced by your credit. Maybe the fiction for the mutual honesty. Upright for the most elaborate safeguard, for the beginning to catch. And the your trickery for the what comes to pass beneath the benediction. For maybe the credit for the offering, the witness in the same inclination. Who's to blame upon for maybe the certainty, for the discipline of the art, for not to bungle upon yourself, for the coinage of the money, for the understanding what was invented. The stealing. The blamable for that, for maybe because the entire self would be too barbaric for the little self-knowledge for being a man. The representative, maybe not combating myself with the name, with a certain promises for what you've become, and accommodated for the self, for the brutal violence of every running ruling power. Maybe I can find myself raised to the act of being upset and hurt. I should be present for the hope, for the special welfare, for the support for the love, for the ever under inner motive, for the reawakening of myself, for the understanding that I compete, for the antagonizing, for the self-inspection. Necessity for the defining relationship, for the art, for the certain gift, for the breeds. When I combine another, it would probably have to be recognized as so. Outset. Maybe too difficult to understand the blinding against the past, cause maybe the happy pure breed. Hand in hand for the declination and what's here, the glamour for this culture. Seek yourself for the welfare for the mankind, bringing to the birth of the great characters of yourself, finding yourself far rather than coming to the light for the almost solely and purebred race. Seemed that it would still be unbroken for the nature of the force and find nothing to say. Higher, the human ego for the only trials that to be the pride for the peculiar pride for that you can find a race and maybe to still give yourself an understanding of the taste of the character. You may be what one day with the mirror. Degeneration for that to be generation, for that to be taken seriously into account. But if you would only not explain what you were trying to say, proper course might be for the future recalling for the example of the devastation. Maybe this the thirsty act for you. With disregard for the population being rooted out of town for the country you can feel your female for the violation not to be found less degree for the be swooned, wished upon, seriously in account, disregards, maybe those who first plan for the rescalation for maybe the patriots, only the meeting for the gentility for the poets. Who's the real patriot? Erratic about it, but the understanding they're no longer wanting of oneself for the vanity and degree only for you to be a character and trait. Aligned with yourself is strange enough for the spirit not to be starred upon and for the witching of once you have the time to treasure. The silliest news for yourself to give it under anything but a phrase for what it represents to you. The expression of the shine for maybe the foreignality for the understanding of what life is beyond. Now I just send the temperament for the ensuring of your domination, what you are to do now. What matters more or less for the name of the lifestyle, for the triumphants, the confessions. I could be liberal. Who's that princess and nationalist for the unity for the disadvantage when you unselfish race? Maybe the venturing off and I should have been obliged to discard it for the idea for maybe an distinction, or perhaps this would be the search for something higher. Events for that to merely vaguely enough to find myself with understanding for the noble I should be happy. Defining my spirit for the purely as a human, or maybe not the cosmopolitan for the fact to be properly I had the expectation for the solution as a problem. Running about for the bits, for the history, for running away for preservation, for the love for the human species, myself and feeling the kinship for one to be intermediate, maybe the springing. For something that was deserved for my to be the survey for the whole the operation to be myself for the pity. Striving to be the best and live in the future and give you a family. Woe to the meaning for the benefit for the benefits in which you can find the unmeasuring of your tongue. Speaking of one for the ignorance of home, drawing for one for the pristine the mountains, maybe taking into account you could do all the study, you know everything but not behind the prima branch. Stretch your limbs for the understanding that you'll never be a spiritual hero. Doing who I need to find you self to parent hero me. Save me from maybe the what's able to understand the prize. Gift myself for the forefathers for the gazing upon the clouded eye, maybe that to be rightly estimated for the foreigners and acting the value. According to undwelling for the understanding the seekers in the sea of the purely, not can be helpful mirror, itself to the subject of genuinity. Maybe not for the great disguises, you could be the great escape for the intellectual, finding yourself especially proclaimed. In the spirit for the conservation, not delivery. Understanding it utterly, maybe the commonality for the dispute. Was a noble act for the clash for the interest, and maybe the objection is only for you to be disputed for the comprehension. Seeing that you're not satisfied or big enough as a dream. You find myself in the depth of the dimension for the peculiarity, for maybe it was a pigmentation for the yo, distraught for the mankind. Maybe the none for those for the party for the soul acts for the dignity. How to be high the sympathy for maybe standing out and watching these as the dreamers assist not to cry for the other to pierce yourself with the human embrace for the until we'll find Halloween will find a man of purpose and the written new idea. Halloween for the interpretation of your maybe idealizing the purchase of it nowadays. You can have the earning for the pan for the invention of money. Maybe the civil rights and maybe the values. Maybe the currency in which you are the habits been defining doom for the song for the name for the figure of the you to be the strangling for the innocence and great shoe for the last the game. No progressiveness and without a rulership indeed to regard the spiritual path. Faith now replaced by your credit. Maybe the fiction for the mutual honesty. Upright for the most elaborate safeguard for the again the catching the show trickery for the what comes to pass beneath the benediction for maybe the credit for the offering the witness in the same inclination. Who's to blame upon for maybe the certainty for the dismay the art for not to bungled upon yourself for the going into the money for the understanding what was invented. The stealing. The blamable for that for maybe because of the entire self for to be too barbaric for the little self-knowledge for being a man. The representative, maybe not combating myself with the name of the certain promises for what you've become, and accommodated for the self for the brutal violence of everyone and ruling power. Maybe I can find myself raging to the act of being upset and hurt. I should be present for the hope of the special welfare for the support for the love for the ever under inner motive for the reawakening of myself for the understanding that I can peak for the antagonizing for the self-inspection. Necessity for the defining relationship for the art for the certain gift for the breed when I can find enough what it would probably have to be recognized as so. Outset. Maybe too difficult to understand the blinding against the past because maybe the happy pure breed. Hand in hand for the declination and what's here the glamour for this culture. Seek yourself for the welfare for the mankind, bringing to the birth of the great characters of yourself, finding yourself far rather than coming to the light for the almost solely and purebred race. Seemed that it would still be unbroken for the nature of the force to find nothing to say. Higher, the human ego for the only trials that to be the pride for the peculiar pride for that you can find a race and maybe to still give yourself an understanding of the taste for the character. You may be what one day with the mirror. Degeneration for that to be generation, for that to be taken seriously into account, but if you would only not explain what you were trying to say, proper course might be for the future recalling for the example of the devastation, maybe the thirsty act for you. With disregard for the population being rooted out of town for the country you can feel your female for the violation not to be found less degree for the could be swooned, wished upon, seriously in account, disregards, maybe those who at first planned for the rascalation, for maybe the patriots, under the meeting for the gentility for the poets. Who's the real patriot? The radical body, but the understanding they're no longer wanting of oneself, with the vanity and degree only for you to be a character and trait. Align with yourself is strange enough, but the spirit did not to be starved upon for the witching of once you had the time to treasure it. The silliest news for yourself to give it under anything but praise for whatever.
Species being, so what it means to be part of humanity as such, and to think from the standpoint of humanity, rather than, let's say, as a kind of individual, or as a in relation to a god.
What man calls himself absolute being, for the self, the God, for the being, for the power of the object, for that to be therefore power for only being. Thus for the power of the object, for the feeling, for the power, for the feeling itself, for the power for the object, for the reason, for the power itself, for the reason, for the self, for the power of the subject, for the power of itself.
Kind of questioning.
You are the mantra for the philosopher, the astronomer for the heavens, reminded in men, the destination for the merely hour act to find the contemplate.
The criticism
This
of
is the essence.
Christianity.
This is the content. This is the understanding of what you can believe in, your ideologies. Maybe it's your eye that you have to deal with the critique, for the understanding of what you can believe in. Maybe this is the article to stretching yourself for the understanding of your beliefs, and maybe the following your adoption for the religious and gradually suppressing yourself with the government.
The secret of theology is
Authorities,
anthropology.
millennia later,
And this is
protecting
one
for
of
the
his most
Reformation,
famous
fundamental for the
claims,
splitting of the
basically
eternal,
saying,
solve for the negate,
that
for the
what God
historical
is, what
accuracy for the
Christianity
yoke,
is,
to be
what all
focused on the
religions
perception of the
are
corrupt.
basically projections
Authorities
of
is
human
systematic.
desires and human
18th for the
fantasies.
oddity,
So if
maybe
we have
for the
an
basic
image of God,
existential.
this is kind of
Criticism for
infinite
your
being,
circularism for the hundreds of years,
all-powerful
zero for die,
being.
find
It says
myself,
that, no,
only
this is
stuck on the
actually
ground,
what
so
we
that
think
is conservative.
humanity is capable
Morality,
of as a
suppress the
species,
desires
right?
contained for the human that will. To power, for the bottom of the revolutionary, maybe the moments and also help to let you respond. Or maybe the self-criticism, you can find some of the most prominent. You can defend yourself in the foundation. Or maybe the behavior.
And say, this is
your ethnic culture and yourself. The Bible's been criticized. Maybe they're not good for the sparing of people. This is the evil having argued over the evidence. Being however they skeptical.
So there's an explanation
And understanding
for
the
why
picture, you
people
can make
desire
yourself
religion,
argue.
why they desire God.
Inconsistency can be
But at the
followed
same
by
time,
the
there's also a kind of
execution, maybe
project
the
there. So
homosexuals
going
and the
back
blasphemy.
in the book
It's
that we're
debating
looking at,
intention
which
for the
is the
punishment
Fiery
and
Brook,
mixing the
which is
linen
a
with the cloth.
collection
Ultimately
of short
undermining the
manifesto-like,
skepticism, maybe the argument.
pieces and prefaces.
Also criticized for the breeding intolerance.
Feuerbach will talk a lot
For
about
having
what we
the
need to
repulsive
do
nature
for
for
the
the
future.
criticism, and maybe
So it's
the
a
aim
really
for the core
kind
for
of
the
active
Christians, or maybe the thought
project
of
in a
hell.
way, and in that way you
For
can
the
really
fear,
see why it would be
for the understanding and
important
describing
as a
what you see as an emerging
practical trigger
photophatism,
for
maybe the
people like
process for the
Marx.
sentiment.
So turning away
Understanding
from
who
kind of
is the
theoretical
version,
speculation
this maybe articulates the
towards
deliberate
something which
opposite
is more
to what Jesus
practical.
embodied.
So, Marx's famous quote
They
about
oppose
philosophers have
science
only
and
interpreted
the
the world,
contradictions
the
for the
point is to
liberal,
change it.
progressive,
And
for the
so it's
social,
Feuerbach who
for the
really
racists and
allows,
religious. And women and
thinkers
people
like
all have
Marx
different
and these other
orientations,
young
and maybe gather upon
left-Hegelians,
yourself with the
to
responsibility
sort
of
of
your number,
challenge some of the orthodoxies of religion
numbers,
and
the study,
philosophy as
your
well.
attitudes.
So
the way to
with
defend yourself
Feuerbach,
for the
who
understanding,
felt
didn't
at
make
home
an
in
impression.
today's, new atheist
Evangelism for the hypocrites, and maybe the activism, maybe the activism for the perceptions, maybe you find yourself for the feminists, and maybe the position you find yourself in perspective, but then maybe the agenda to the basis of only degree, the members in theology, the morality, and maybe the feminists, and maybe the preferring to avoid the label for the feminists, and maybe the limited the notion of find yourself in the century of the hierarchy.
The
leadership for the method of maintaining of yourself to be your teacher. Or the leader for the caretaker, but yourself for the idea for the being, of the God for the regarding of the relationship. You can have your children in the Christian. It doesn't matter if you believe. You call for the way they're giving up. These episodes is holding on for the mercy. I need you to hold on. Please do it for me. I want to help you. May the Spirit of the Father maybe speak through you for the times of your persecution, for the understanding good direction. I'm going to myself with the points of that behind myself through the testament for the language of the divine adaptation for the generations. It's only the idea for the goddess of the Father. Because He is. You are the new life. Saving us through myself and sanctified for the Spirit. Claims yourself for the clarity. Maybe for the metaphor, for the analogy. Earthly fatherhood for the obvious. This is not merely for the Father's Christ, an idea for the your distinction, for the senses of understanding and the treatment. You should be implied for the equality. Maybe the morality for the roles for the strongest, define and defend the best gender for the Jesus was, and maybe implication of the name. That shouldn't matter whether for the or that could be the message for the opposing self, for the pastor, for the decision of blinding. Prevent the one.